believe that just happened. The dead deer. He dropped right where we had him. Yes! Oh my gosh. Holy crap. The great Hambino right here. All right, we're back for another episode of the Fall Podcast in studio today. And I got my good buddy David Riley with me. And he was just on an episode with me with the season 22. But he came up here today because he's got a pretty good story here. There's a little bit of a theme going on, I feel like, with the podcast. And, you know, I just had Nick Kohili on. Crazy story, you know what I mean? And I don't know why I'm just fumbling. I'm not comfortable right now for some reason.
Is this your first time doing this?
I feel like this is my first time even like ever hosting a show. It's weird. But I'm doing something new. This is the first episode we're actually trying to record video. And as I'm looking at the camera here, don't know how it's going to look. We're going to try it. The cameras might go dead. I don't know. So back to the theme, Nick Kohili was on here and had just a crazy story. And as of today, we're filming this, or recording this, that deer's still alive. Nick's deer's still alive. So we left that podcast of like, well, he didn't really know. He looked for him, stuff like that. He got a picture of him on the morning of November 14th. So, I mean, he could be dead with gun season, happening the other day, or starting the other day. But he had a picture of him still alive, so which is crazy.
Yeah, it's. I actually listened to that on the way up here, and even before I listened to it, I've talked to Nick a little bit about it, and it's their will to survive is it's second to none. It's at times almost unbelievable what they'll do to stay alive. Yeah,
and it's that's kind of today's podcast as well with your story. And you know, we've talked about it a little bit on here, Alex Chops buck.
Yep.
You know, and we're going to get into shot placement today a little bit because where Alex hit that deer is where you teach your kids to shoot the deer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yep. And then, you know, with Nick's shots, the jury's still out on it, I feel like. I feel like his first shot was higher than the vital organs. I think it was really high where I think it ducked his arrow. The second one, I haven't seen the footage. I haven't, you know, so I really don't know, but Nick even made a conscious effort to kind of get away from the shoulder, you know, and kind of shoot center mass. And
sure.
I started making that transition, but now I've made my setup with, you know, my vector arrows and the Helix broadheads that I use, that like I hug the shoulder now. I've shot 2 deer through both front shoulder blades now with my setup, and it took the heart out. Like, so, you know, in the past I've shot mechanicals and couldn't get a pass through.
Yeah.
You know, so I could see like being a mechanical, maybe getting that center mass, but boy, I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough because actually my buddy and I were just talking about Alex's buck this morning because my buddy kind of made was talking to me about, man, it sounds like he knows a handful of guys that have lost some deer.
Yep.
And some questionable shots, some kind of they knew they were bad shots, but we kind of keep circling back to Alex's buck because we actually have footage of it, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you watch that footage, you just scratch your head about how is that deer not dead in the first 140? You know what I mean? So, but you know that's one of the plus things about guys that are videoing their stuff that you can really rewatch it back and learn. And you know, when you talk about Nick's buck and that first shot, that it might be a little high, and you look at the exit wound and say, okay, maybe, but then you look at the amount of blood on that arrow, and it was just like, okay, then where'd that kind of blood come from?
Exactly.
You know, so that's it. It's truly a game of inches. You know, an inch up or an inch down or left or right. And it can mean a 40-yard track job, or it can mean 2 miles, or it could mean a buck that's not even dead yet.
Well, and that's like, I've never really had a year like this as far as people close to me losing deer or needing a dog.
Yep.
Or, you know, I think I referred to this year as the year of the tracking dog.
Yeah.
For me, and, you know, my first buck, I had a tracking dog just because I have a good buddy that has a good dog. And I'm like, it was pouring rain. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's gonna be no blood.
Yep.
And the dog went 43 yards. Like
Yeah.
so that's just something I have in my back pocket to where I can use that. But I've never had a year like Nick or Alex's where it's very head scratching. Like I literally don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I even think back of the night you shot your first buck, and great shot, heart shot him. But even before then, like there was a little bit of questions of how that arrow looked.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was on suicide watch.
Right. And so it's at those moments that leave you just wondering. You know what I mean? And even afterwards, okay, now you heart shot them, recovered them, ran under 50 yards, but then you still in the back of mind, you're wondering, well, why did my arrow look like this?
Yeah.
And
in my arrow, to kind of explain to everybody, I should have brought it down here now that we're filming, I could show it, but it was very filmy, like fat film.
Yeah.
Like there was fat deposits on the arrow. I shoot a white vein, and it looked like a high hit to me, but I knew it wasn't high. Sure. I knew if anything, it was just a touch low. There was a little bit of blood on the veins, but on one vein, there was like actually like good, rich red blood, but it was all dried.
Yep.
The arrow really mind screwed me.
Sure.
And to this day, I mean, after finding him, I took him right in the front shoulder, and it went right through his heart and came out in his armpit on the other side.
Yeah.
So like, right at impact, there was white hair all over, and I'm like, shoot, did I just graze his belly?
Sure.
I think the white hair was from the armpit.
Yep.
On the other side where that brown meets the white.
I think that sometimes messes with a lot of guys that you see that white hair and you're like, oh, I cut his belly or his brisket. Where, next time you recover a deer, for anyone listening, take back either the left or the right front shoulder and open it up, pull that leg up, and you'll see there's some white hair up in that armpit. And a lot of times, that's actually a super good exit spot.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And it was, I mean, it was a real mind trickery deal. And you can ask my buddy Phil. He came over and he's like in the garage with me, and we're waiting for Taylor to get here with the dog. And I even think he thought we weren't going to find the deer.
Yeah.
And with all the fat and everything on, it had that white fat film on it, and I'm like, I don't know where it came from. I don't know if he just had so much film or fat. I mean, like, how they get that fat in like their chest and their lower belly.
Yep.
I don't know if it just went through there and it was fat. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, not only is your buddies looking at it, you talked to a very high-end tracking dog service that
Rob
night.
Miller. I talked to Rob.
And even he thought, like, man,
he said one lung and you're not going to find the deer.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, and that's not a jab to throw at Rob. He's literally going off of a couple pictures I sent him of the arrow and what I told him. And honestly, my thoughts were I hit the deer low. I didn't even think I hit him in the shoulder.
Yeah.
I was 1.5 inches right of where I thought I hit him and a little low. And that's why he was like, man, one lung. And if he doesn't, what did he say? If he doesn't bleed in the first 30 yards, that's your number one indication that it's a one lung hit deer. And I'm like, boy, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's why, that's so much more goes into it than what just that arrow looks like. And we take a lot from that arrow. We're looking at it, we're smelling it, trying to figure out what maybe happened. And so when you have someone that's just looking at that arrow, sometimes it can be deceiving to people.
Yeah. And, one thing that I've done over the years is when I go on a track job, I try to go on as many track jobs as I can. Like if your buddies shoot one, like genuinely I like to track, but because you see so many different things,
Sure.
So I like to go on track jobs, but I dissect the shit out of everything.
Yeah.
Everybody looks at me when I like literally sniff the arrow, every arrow, and they're like, what are you sniffing? I'm like, well, that's going to tell you some things there, gut, maybe if you got into the intestines or something like that, or I need to know everything. I'm a type A human that needs to know. I need details. I need plans. I just don't want to run in the woods. Like I remember Alex's deer, and I think Jake Metallic from Latitude as well. He kind of thinks like me in a way. I think that's how I was picking up. Like Jake and I were kind of leading the charge a little bit for most of that track.
Yeah.
But even him, I would look at him and he's like, because we'd get guys that would start spreading out and kind of, and he's like, I don't like going ahead unless that's all I have to do. Like,
Sure.
There's times where I'll look, if I know that there's a hard edge coming up and that deer's running that way, I'll go to that hard edge if it's out of a clear cut or something like that, because typically a lot of times a deer will jump, from a clear cut. If he's running, jump or brush up on something or a trail. Like if you can knock off 50, 80, 100 yards of your track by just doing a big loop around and cutting a track or getting blood on a 2-track, I mean, that's a game changer.
Yeah. That was the first track job that I was able to be with you actually on ever, and watching you guys, because I'll be the first to admit I am like a grade D or E type tracker, and
he's colorblind,
not a good tracker at all. So my job's always just to stand back at last blood, and I'm okay with that. I'll take that job. But watching you guys track, I could tell that you guys have been around some track jobs, and you guys are both very good at it.
Well, and that's if there's one takeaway I think for people is just get on as many tracks as you can, dissect everything about it. And still, I'm learning more about the anatomy every year.
Sure.
When I shot my Michigan deer last year, I was always in the impression going up into last year was like, when you say the guts, like that to me meant intestines, everything.
Yeah.
It's like you use the word, I need a Kleenex.
Yeah.
Well, Kleenex is a brand.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Right.
But it's like everybody calls a Kleenex when it's really a tissue.
Right.
So like when you say guts, to me, it's like, okay, that's just the gut bag, where all the food and everything's digested. Well, really, last year, my deer was a straight intestinal hit, and I don't think I got into the guts at all. It was just intestines, and I always thought the intestines and guts were just
all one.
Yeah. When really, you really got to break down that anatomy. And because to me, that's a different, he's going to die.
Yeah. Yep. He needs time. He'll die.
And that's a different hit. I don't know. Just dissect it. Learn more about it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yep. For sure.
So, let's get into your story here. I felt like we had to kind of get that off our chest just because it plays a lot into what we're going to talk about. And I guess the best way to start is like back in the summer when you found out about this deer, and great deer, unbelievable deer. Let's get into that, because I know you're a big scouter in glass all summer. You do it every night. You do it more than anybody I know. So let's get into like when you first laid eyes on him and like you really thought he was going to be something.
Yeah. So to start off, I actually didn't know this deer from being a returning buck from the 2021 season or anything. So when I first laid eyes on him, July 5th was the very first night. And I seen him out glassing. And I had the spot and scope on with the phone adapter and whatnot. And he had 10 countable points already. But as an antler growth, he was always behind all the other local bucks in the area, where when I say he had 10 countable points, like every point was maybe like a 1 or 2 inches up off his main beams.
Okay.
But you could see like he had the frame that he was going to be wide, but even early on in July, he kind of looked like he didn't have a ton of mass.
Okay.
But it was always like, boy, that's a wide buck, and he's going to be loaded with points. We'll see how he finishes. And then sometime in mid-July is when I start deploying my cameras. And it took about, I don't know, a week or two, and he was already using one of my scrapes that I had built. And even then, when I started getting pictures, just comparing him to all the other deer in the area, he looked like he was 2 to 3 weeks behind. And so I questioned about how he would actually finish, because then I started getting, a little excited about, well, maybe, just maybe, he's going to make a big push late in the summer compared to all the other deer.
Yep.
And that's kind of what he exactly did. And some of that stuff it's always so interesting, because it's like, why? Like, is it just his genetic profile to be a late grower compared to everyone else, or was he
shower or a grower?
Right. It's funny you say that, but was he lacking something nutrition wise early on in the summer, or was he a late born fawn? Who knows, okay?
Yeah.
But as July and August went on, and I'm showing a few of my buddies pictures, and I can remember one day you and I were talking about him. I was like, he's good, but he's kind of wispy looking, or you said maybe wispy, and so instantly that kind of nicknamed him Wispy, because he ended up being he's a beautiful mainframe 10-point.
Beautiful deer.
Yeah, and he's got a wall of tines, like, and his twos kind of go out behind him, and his twos are his shortest tines up on top of his main beam. So he's very distinct, but he never really put that mass on. So there was a point in the summertime that I questioned if, like, I had that thought, and I know everyone probably thinks that there was that thought. I was like, man, if this deer has all the potential in the world, but I also understood, I know who I am, and that if I was up in that tree and that those wall of tines were coming through, the bow was coming off the hanger. That was I knew that in my head.
He wasn't your number one deer.
Not my number one deer.
But still a great deer.
No, yeah. He's still, he is in the top. He's a great deer in Michigan. And we'll get into the size later on. But so once Velvet shed, it just kind of confirmed that he never really put that mass on. He put everything into his main beams and his tines. And he didn't have the greatest brow tines. He had one really good one and one kind of shorter one. But he really, like, his best tines are his threes and his fours. I mean, just not to jump too far ahead, but his fours are pushing like 7-8 inches on each side. So he was super symmetrical, just a beautiful 10-point.
It's an unbelievable 4.
Yeah. And so then as we roll into season, he's living on a particular property that had another deer on it that I was in love with this deer, and he, I don't care what he would have scored. And for anyone listening, if we talk anything about numbers today, it's kind of just for reference, so somebody can
all it is.
Paint a picture. Like, they're listening to this, they can kind of paint a picture of what kind of caliber deer it is. Well, there was a deer, another deer I was hunting in the area that I actually have never even thought about putting a number on him. I don't even think he'd ever hit 140 type, but he had brow tines for days. I mean, just incredible. So luckily, these two deer kind of overlapped areas, and that's some of my best hunting is when I'm hunting areas with multiple targets in it. And it's some people may call it just like a target-rich environment, but it's, for me, I talk about it a lot, it's a numbers game.
100% a numbers game.
Yeah. And so, like, my hunting time is limited. I've talked about that just with having a busy family and whatnot. And so the better the numbers are, the better my odds are when I do get those days to hunt. So going into October, it's always a thing. I've killed my majority of deer have come in November. They have. And it's always, I've killed deer in October, but I've never really killed that Pope and Young caliber deer. And it's always like, I kind of
October, you're saying?
In October, yeah. Yep. And I always I break October down into like 7-day segments. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Okay. And as October rolled around, I had this sense where, like, I was kind of in the game, but in the back of my mind, I really wasn't. Going into season, I felt really good. Like, a lot of my trail camera setups on my scrapes, like, things were just firing. And somewhere in middle of October, I found myself not really, I didn't feel dialed in on one particular deer. And I think that hindered me a little bit.
Okay.
I look back at last season when I was kind of hunting one specific deer. I felt dialed. Like, I felt like I was always on his heels. Mm-hmm. Well, this year, my target list wasn't as big as normal is, but there's a good deer over here. There's a good deer over here. Where I was doing some bouncing, but I never was honing in. And I look back at that, and I wish I maybe would have did that different. But there was a day in the middle of October that is somewhere around, say, the 15th to the 20th, that I had a hunt, and afterwards, I felt like I was really tightening the grip in this area on this deer. And I didn't see them, but I was getting some pictures of them here and there. And with my scouting, like my middle of the day scouting and the sign I was seeing, and where I wasn't seeing the sign, like I felt like I was tightening the grip on this deer. And so we'll kind of fast forward through October. I had no encounters with him, but he was daylighting.
Why don't you think you had encounters with him?
I think I was bouncing around too much on other good deer here, other good deer here. Like I just wasn't focused on, and that may be something I'd change, because I look back at last year when I killed that buck I called the rib cage, and boy, like I felt like I was on him every hunt. Like I devoted my season to killing that deer.
Yep.
And most of those seasons that you do that, they probably are unsuccessful seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
The chances of picking out one specific buck and hunting him down are very slim. It's tough to do, and you have to be willing to swallow that tag at the end of the season. But on the flip side, I look back, as of right now, the stuff I learned hunting one specific deer last year, I feel like I learned so much that season that it was like light years above just kind of bouncing around to good deer here. Like when I decided to hunt one great deer, like my hunting was more like, like my T's were crossed.
Yep.
Yes, like I felt dialed.
And that, I agree with you. I'm kind of the same way, where it's a numbers game. Like on any particular year, I usually have at least 2 deer that I'm going to shoot.
Sure.
Okay, 2 deer that I know are in the area, and they overlap areas just like yours do. And so my whole game plan is like, whatever deer comes by first is going to be the deer. But, I try to put myself into a situation where the best odds to see him,
Sure.
one of them,
Yep.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, I don't know what I'm getting at, actually. I mean, but I agree with you. Like the learning curve and the expedited learning, when you do that,
Yes.
is exponential. So, what I was getting at is, like, even like in my work life, if I don't feel a little bit stressed, I'm not on my game.
Sure.
If I'm cool, relaxed, and sitting here and be like, man, I think I got everything done. That's when my guard gets dropped, and that's when the ball gets dropped and I forget something.
Yep.
So like I equate that to like hunting as well. I want to be just a little bit stressed.
Yeah.
And it's because then I'm more like detail, or like on a micro level, I'm more detail oriented.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from with it.
Yeah, and it's like I said, in that style of hunting that I'm talking about, it may not be for everyone. Like this is like a learning process for me of what I feel like, what I'm excelling at this way compared to this way. But as and this is only 3 weeks into October, but I was starting to feel like that. I felt like, I was kind of talking to myself. I'm like, David, you need to pick a deer and go hunt them. Like, hunt this deer down, swing, go, either you're going to hit a home run or swing missing, like it's.
And think about it too. Like, you're half done with season though. The way we look at it.
Yes.
Because when November 15th rolls around, our season is, as bow hunters, is.
It's coming to an end.
Yeah.
Yeah. I shouldn't say coming to an end, but our real serious
hunting. It gets tough. It gets tougher.
Our real serious kind of, quote unquote, hardcore hunting kind of gets put on the back burner.
Well, what you live for, in the off season and all year round, you live for October 1st for us to November 15th.
Yeah.
Like, you live for that as a bow hunter.
Yep.
And like, let me put this into perspective. We're going to divert a little bit here, but this year we have to register our deer.
Yep.
On our app, we can see like a tally by county and a total number and how many deer are harvested and registered. Okay. Yep. I'm not saying every deer is registered, but let me throw these stats at you. You text me this the night before opening day of rifle season.
Yep.
Give or take a couple. David said there was 97,000 deer killed from October. Well, not from October 1st, from youth season
youth season, Liberty season, and antlerless season.
Yes.
Then the entire month of October.
Yeah. So youth season started like the second week of September. Mm-hmm. So let's just say September 10th ish. I can't remember the date to November 14th. There was 97,000 deer harvested and reported in the state of Michigan. I checked the numbers this morning. We're recording this, and it is November 16th. So we had one opening day. Mm-hmm. Yesterday for opening day, registered harvested deer, there was 21,500 deer killed and registered.
Yeah. And
just in one day.
And just think, you also have 72 hours.
Yes. So I think we're going to see it. Let me actually go look right now.
There could easily be, it could be double that amount. I mean, how many, let's just say you're in northern Michigan at a deer camp, just like we went to. If you, like, any of the deer that were killed up there that day, they just reported them the next day when they had service. Because you do have 72 hours. You have 3 days to report them.
Exactly.
So that would you say 25,000?
21,500.
21,000. That was just the people that reported their deer over a 12-hour daylight span yesterday.
Yeah, and I was talking to my boss, Mark, about it this morning because he's a Michigan guy, and I told him that, okay, here you go. So as of right now, at noon on November 16th, 126,138 deer have been harvested and reported in the state of Michigan. So if I do that,
so now you're talking 30,000.
Yeah, we're upwards of 30. We're around 30,000 deer have been killed in the last day and a half.
Yeah,
that have been registered, and not everybody registered their deer, but like that's a pretty solid number.
Yeah.
That's a lot of deer.
Well, then just to break it down one more step, what time you texted me this morning? What, 4 hours ago? So we went from 21,000 to now 30,000 over the last couple hours.
Yeah, I text you probably like 7:30 this morning or something like that. Now it's noon, so in 4 or 5 hours,
another 9,000 deer. 8,000 deer.
And a lot of that's probably yesterday's kills.
Sure.
But I mean, this morning they're crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yep.
So anyway, we diverted there. But
a little bit.
Anyway, get back. I don't even know where we were at.
Yeah. So, we were just kind of talking about, where my season was in mid-October. And as some of these good days are coming, you've heard me talk a lot about like that 14th through 19th. And I had a hunt somewhere in there, and I can't remember the exact date, but after that hunt, I felt like I was really kind of tightening the grip on this area that either of these two bucks could live in. The real big one was just a real crapshoot. Honestly, at the end of the day, we're talking about a deer that never even showed up till August 27th. I had 8 pictures of them from August 27th through October 30th, and all 8 pictures are from 8 different cameras on 3 different properties. So
wow.
Yeah, so but I just knew he was in the area, so it kind of keeps you, that keeps you, keeps you going sometimes, the foot on the gas, but I also knew that there was this typical 10 point in there too. And I had a hunt, like I said, in middle of October, and I really felt like I was tightening the grip, and there was kind of like a light switch moment. I said, okay, this is it. I'm going to start really spending my time in here, really focusing on this deer. I feel like right now he's kind of the most killable deer, and moving forward, he was going to get my effort. And we're going to fast forward to October 29th. I was going out hunting that morning. It was on a Saturday, and the day before, one of my favorite things is looking at that weather app and seeing the clear blue skies for the following morning and the really low temperatures. And that morning, that's what we were going to get. Like, you pack your heavy jacket in because it's going to be clear blue skies, and it's going to be somewhere in the low 30s. And this deer he was in this area. It's way back in a swamp. And I call it like a Franken scrape on this island. I built it back in March last year. And he was using it. And he didn't touch it at all. And July and most of August. But eventually, towards the end of summer, he moved back there. And when I seen him shift back there, I think we had actually talked. I said, if I'm going to kill this deer, I'll kill him back in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this specific area was I had to hunt a little bit different this year, and this I had to learn this on the fly. In my particular part of Michigan, it was pretty dry this year, and most of these swamps that they're usually so flooded that's what makes these islands so good the way they are. But there was no water this year, and I was starting to notice that the sign and the deer sightings I was seeing, they were just kind of sporadic.
Gotcha.
Okay. But he was consistently kind of using this scrape. And so the morning of October 29th, I was headed in, and I felt very confident with the wind direction, the conditions. It was a killing morning. Like it's a Saturday morning. It's a freaking perfect day to smoke this deer.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm driving, I'm making the drive to this property, and I can see the stars, and I'm just giddy, like other than the walk is horrendous to
Sucks.
get back. Oh, it's really bad. As I'm starting to walk back there, and I got my headlamp on, I'm starting to see like kind of not rain drizzle, but like that foggy drizzles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that wasn't on the way in. I like driving here, I was not seeing that in the headlights. The truck didn't have anything on it. And as the more and more I kept pushing into the swamp, it became clear that the swamps were full of fog that morning. And if it wasn't for me knowing this area kind of like the back of my hand, you could get lost out there, because even though you had a headlamp on, you probably could only see 3 to 4 foot in front of you.
Yep.
And like you could feel that kind of mist on your face. Like I said, it's not raining, but it's just so thick. Like when that mist, and it's not even falling, it's just like lingering in the air. And I was like, I don't know, this may mess this hunt up a little bit. And got in there, got all set up, and had a great hunt. Seen 7 or 8 bucks, one borderline shooter that morning, and they were up moving. I mean, they were harassing the does. I mean, it was a great morning, but the visibility was bad. Well, eventually the morning hunt went on, and it was going to warm up that day. Even though it was in the low 30s that morning, we were looking at 70s in the afternoon.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well, we did have like a hot or warmer.
Yeah. It was, you got to think like that was the Michigan State football game day. Like it was beautiful weather for football Saturday. Like that was perfect. But I put a lot of emphasis on hunting the morning. That I was going to hunt in the evening too, but the morning hunt I thought was, just by weather wise, was going to be it. Well, so I hunt that morning, and then I'm heading out, and I check camera, and I'm getting these pictures. And I said, oh, shoot, he's somewhere else right now. He's still
on a different farm?
He's still on the same property, but he's just in a different area. And it's only a couple hundred yards away. But what I'm about to explain is I'm starting to see this, and I think there's some theory behind it. And yes, to a deer, a couple hundred yards isn't much at all, right?
Right.
But he was up in an area that he didn't spend time there in the summer, and he hadn't spent time there for the first 3 weeks of October. And I'm looking, I'm like, he was all over the place the last couple days. Like he was all up in this area. And I text my one buddy, and I says, I think he's vulnerable. I think he's, not that he doesn't know the area, he's just not in his, he may be like, he's not in his core area. He may be like, this may be his secondary area, but like he just looked vulnerable. He, like when I seen
like a fish out of water kind of thing.
Yeah, he looked like he was out of place. And I mean, any like, so I had one cell camera in there, but then I had 2 or 3 like SD card cameras along this ridge. And these were just kind of soaker spots that I want to learn about. And later on in the story, you'll hear why I checked these cameras. But like there was a 2 or 3 day window where like he was just, it didn't matter what time of the day, he was just on his feet in there. And so that night I made a game plan. I said, well, I'm just going to shift a little bit, because he's up in there. The wind's going to be iffy, but he looks vulnerable to me. So that's where I was headed that night. So whether my wife likes it or not, she got the full game plan of what was going to happen that night. Okay. So like we're watching the Michigan State game. I think it was at noon. And so I'm going to head out as soon as that game ends about 3:00. I'm going to head out on the 29th of October.
Michigan State was night game, wasn't it?
Was it?
I'm pretty sure it was a night game.
Then who'd they play on the 29th?
It was the week before.
No. You're right. They were playing that night. Okay.
Yes.
There was some game going on during the day that day.
It was Alabama,
Tennessee.
Something like that.
Remember. One of those games. There was a noon game that I was wanting to watch, and I was sitting there watching. And I was thinking, right at 3:00, I need to roll out of here. And so, I broke. It's so funny because I can just see her listening to me. But
Ohio State, Penn State played that day.
There you go.
That's what it was.
I can see my wife listening to me, and I just know she probably doesn't care. But she's getting the full rundown of what the plan is for the night. The deer, I try to hunt confidently. And the deer I'm going to go out there and shoot. This is where I'm going to kill them. Come back. That's right. We'll watch the Michigan State game that night. So I take off from the house about 2:40-ish or so, and I drive to the property.
I'm over here tagged out problems. I was at a pumpkin patch.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You guys were at a pumpkin patch.
Because I got the phone call.
Yeah. So I'm kind of headed back. It's quite a walk back in there, and I'm headed back into this new area. Not new area to me, but like where I believe I can kill this buck that evening, just because of, like I said, I thought he was vulnerable. Somewhere 27th and 28th, he was super vulnerable. So I was going in there for the night of the 29th, October 29th. And as I'm making my way back there, and there's roads on kind of all sides of this property, as I'm making my way back there, I'm kind of like up ahead, I can see a road, and I see a deer standing there.
In the timber?
Yeah.
Because you're coming in off of a field, right? Like a field edge?
Yeah, like I'm kind of walking down, like just inside the corn. Like I have you can walk on the edge of the field, but I like to walk like a couple of rows in.
Yep.
But it was dry that day. Like it was really, the sun was high and the leaves had already dried out from all that misty fog in the morning. So it was loud. Like it was, when I was even going through the corn, it was a little bit loud, but I just didn't want to be skylined anywhere. So I'm kind of walking, and I'm kind of watching this road up ahead because I know I need to eventually make a turn for my route. And I see this deer standing up there with its head down. Okay. And maybe this ain't the greatest thing in the world, but there's times when I'm headed out hunting that, like, sometimes I've ran into deer and it's like, okay, I've had to wait for this fawn for 20 minutes.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Then you just blow them out.
Yeah, let's just get rid of them. And I see this deer up ahead, and it has its head down, and where it's at, like, I can see its body, but I can't get a good look at its body. And so I'm like, oh. I take a couple more steps, and I say, maybe I should just wait for it to pick its head up. And the deer picks its head up, and I instantly go, oh my God, it's wispy.
How far is he?
So at this point, when I first see him, he's probably about 60, 65 yards
Oh,
out.
geez, you're that tight already.
Oh, yeah. And I instantly, in my head, the first thing I thought was, how has this deer not heard me? That was the first thought that ran through my head is, how did this buck not hear me coming?
Mm-hmm. But you did say there's a road by you, so are there cars going by?
Yes. So
okay.
This is a pretty busy road in Michigan, and I think the external noise kind of hid my noise. And this is going to come play later on in the story of things lessons I learned from this. But so I'm kind of in that 60, 65, maybe 70 yards out, and I'm kind of looking at him, and I'm kind of looking ahead or behind him or kind of where he has to go. And he's got a road, like he's close by a road, or I'm like, in my mind, I goes, if I can get to a certain area, I'm going to get a shot at this deer. And so, I don't know, a lot of people don't know, but I've been trying to like self-film some of my hunts this year. And I instantly went into hunter mode. Like I didn't have a tree stand or anything on my back because I've been using a saddle. So all I have to do is get an arrow out of my quiver, knock it, and I shoot a hinge release. So I pull that out of my pocket and we're hunting.
Yep.
Like instant hunter mode right away. And so I closed that distance from 60 to 65 yards into, I can see up ahead, I can see a downfall. And if I can get to that downfall, I'll get a shot at him if I can find a window.
How far is he in the timber?
So he's in the timber probably, he's where he was at the timber at that time off this giant cornfield he's probably 40 yards in there.
Okay.
But I up ahead I can see this downfall. And it just the way it's laying, it's a freshly broken branch. So it still has all the leaves, but they have turned kind of dry, but they're brown, but it's got good cover. And so I instantly just get to my hands and knees. I'm taking my bow and kind of setting it in front of me. More I go, more
I was there.
Yeah. And if mine didn't take as long as yours, I can tell you that. And I get to there, and he kind of picks his head up, and he's taking it all in. You know, at this point, I feel like his hearing has got to be washed away. That's one of his senses.
Because of the cars.
Yeah, one of his senses are gone.
Did you ever think that he had any does around him, or he was locked on a doe or anything?
You know what? I honestly didn't, because when I first seen him, he was just browsing.
Just eating.
Yeah, just eating, and this is at 3:00 in the afternoon, and it is light pants and a lightweight merino wool type hunting gear. Like it's
warmer.
Yeah, no gloves, no hat walking in, like bare minimum, because it's hot that day. It's 70 degrees, and so I get to this downfall, and then I kind of work myself up to get into a kneeling position. And he picks his head up, and he's just kind of surveilling the area, and he's licking his nose, kind of like when you've been around these more mature deer, I should say, that they're constantly like just checking everything. Mm-hmm. And he makes this turn kind of head on towards me, and at that point I said, he's coming. He's going to come right in here. So then my next thing is I'm looking for windows. I'm looking at windows. And he doesn't take about 5 or 6 steps, and he stops. And I see this often when you spend a lot of time in the woods, that there's so many branches out there in the timber that the deer will just they'll maul them, or they'll just rub their forehead on. They won't. It's not a giant scrape or anything, but they'll just spend time right there just smelling it and stuff. He takes 5 or 6 steps from the first location I seen him, and now I've closed the distance, and he's closing the distance towards me. And he turns broadside, and he starts working this, what I'm going to call a licking branch, but it's not a scrape or anything.
How far do you think he's at?
I think he's at 30, because this is the point where I'm watching him, and I probably watch him. It seems like forever, but it's probably 10, 20, or maybe 30 seconds. That I'm sitting there, I'm still in the kneeling position, that I can see a window, that I don't have to move from where I'm at, and he doesn't need to move anymore. And I'm kind of looking at the yardage. I'm sitting there going, okay, there's 10, there's 20, there's 30.
Your top pin club is where you're at.
I'm right in there. And like I let him, like I didn't even, when he hit that window, I didn't shoot him right away, because like I didn't think he was just going to stand there. Like he felt so comfortable where he was at that day. It's like he's never had an encounter with a human right there, or he felt like he was at such an advantage of where he was that if a human was to come through there, he would know. Like that, his demeanor was so calm, and I wish I would have read that better here later on in the story. I wish I would have read the situation in his body a little bit better.
Well, that's difficult to do, because now I've been on 2 stalks in the last 2 years. And I will say last year, you guys can go back and listen to my Michigan buck story, but I think I even talk about how, where I was telling myself, like, he is so keyed on this doe, and just like calm, just relax.
Yeah.
Like, you want everything to be expedited. You want it to, like, I want him now. He's right there. Just grab him.
Yep.
When really it helped me this year on my deer that I stalked, where it was like, I got all day.
Yeah. Yep.
let him tell you what you should do.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it really helped me. And the more you can do it, the better. But we don't get a lot of chances to do it,
No, yeah, sure. Like like I'm going to be completely honest. This is the first deer the first bigger buck I've killed off the ground kind of. And this is like I said, like I just went into straight hunter, like everything went out the window of my plan or what gear. Like I didn't take the quiver off my bow. I didn't take my backpack off. Like, I didn't have to take the saddle off or nothing. Like I just go into like a kill mode. Like how can I, as soon as I identify that I know exactly what deer this is, I go into kill mode.
So tell me this, you talk about the quiver. Can you shoot with your quiver on your bow?
Yeah.
I mean, I know physically you can,
Yeah.
like I can too, but I am consistently off the mark when I try to shoot with my quiver on my bow.
Okay.
Because like I'll practice every year. I seem to practice a little bit with a quiver on in the yard. For whatever reason, I cannot shoot as accurate without my quiver. So like, which sucks because in those 2 stalks I've had to take my quiver off and I knock an arrow and then I just keep one in my hand and I leave the quiver. So it's like you get 2 shots is what you're at,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just was curious if
Yeah.
I practice at it, but I just can't do it.
Yeah, like I'll practice. You want to honestly know when I probably practice the most with the quiver. It's kind of so when I'm hunting, the quiver comes off all the time. Okay, and I don't shoot in the yard with it on, but I'll shoot once in a while. And a lot of times, like come hunting season, when I'm just trying to shoot an arrow real quick before going out, that's a lot of times I'll just grab the practice arrow out of the garage and shoot one, and the quiver will be on. But I was so worried about, when I flipped that switch to kill mode and I needed the least amount of movement possible. Like I didn't think I could take the quiver
Gotcha.
off. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So like it just stayed on, like just tunnel vision. How can I ethically kill this animal off the ground with basically, I'm going to have to find some kind of cover.
What's the wind doing?
So the wind is perfect for me. Okay. So we have like an easterly wind. Okay. I'm north of him and he is directly south of me.
Okay. So the wind is cutting him like sideways.
Yeah.
Like
So
hitting.
like where he was that day. Okay. Cause I've went since backtracked of what he meant it. So like he was walking into the wind, straight into the wind, and then went eventually right before I'm going to get my opportunity, he starts quartering into the wind. So the way he was maneuvering through it's kind of like a little funnel, then it opens up to another patch of cover and then into another big swamp, that he was basically head on into the wind during he had to be on his feet all day. Because when I got down and walked out in the morning, I had walked right through all this stuff. So
Really?
Sometime during the day, he had come and moved back in here. So he's hitting this licking branch, okay? And I didn't come to full draw right away on him because I'm thinking, I'm going to get a closer shot. But I'm also one, I take my opportunity when I see it. And it took me probably about 10, 20 seconds to watch him. And I finally was like, that's my window. 10 yards, 20 yards. It looks like 30. And I'm on the ground, so all I can think, I'm like, this deer is going to, this is ground level, he's going to duck. So I made it a point to aim on that bottom third, okay, right at the, top of that heart, lungs, okay, what I thought. And I know when I come to full draw, I kind of come to full draw and I pull my head back off the peep, because I want to make sure that this arrow is going to get through, because it's thick. Like the rangefinder isn't going to pick up the deer. You have to manually figure out how far this deer is. And when I look back, in my head, I'm thinking there's 3 scenarios. You're going to completely 12 ring them. You'll hit high, or completely 12 ring them. You'll hit over them. You'll hit under them. You can't hit left and you can't hit right, because it's going to look like a ping pong ball going through your arrow will be just dinging off of all the trees and all the brush and stuff in here. It's either right in the vitals or high miss or miss low. That's in my mind. I'm thinking that. So I pick 30. Okay. And I don't have to stop him or anything. He's comfortable where he's at. and I put it kind of right on that top of that heart. And, I shoot that hinge and I go through the click and then just let it rip and it breaks off clean. I can see that arrow. And later on, I play the scenario back. He is probably 2 to 3 feet in elevation below where I am up on, because I've made my way out of this cornfield right onto the edge and it kind of drops down. Okay. And instantly I say, I fucking missed him.
Like complete miss.
Complete miss. Like I seen the arrow. Nope, completely missed. And he never even moved until he heard, like what I thought, until he heard the arrow hit like under him. And he takes 2 bounds and stops. And I instantly, boom, I'll grab another arrow. But now he's right into that thick stuff. Or like if I would have missed left, he's in all that thick stuff. Like I couldn't, if I missed left, I would have shot a bunch of trees and brush. And he's just standing there. He's not hunched. He's not anything. He's just standing there going, I heard something, but I don't know where it came from. And he's kind of just looking around. And I'm next, me still being in that kill mode, I'm looking for my next hole somewhere I can shoot him. And then he makes a 180, like he's going to go right back to that licking branch. I goes, you do it again, I know where I'm aiming this time. Like, and maybe that would have been wrong because now he's a little bit on high alert because there was no alert to him the first time. And I'm like, oh, you go back to that branch. Please do it this time. I mean, like, because I know where I need to aim this time. So he does a 180, but then as soon as he does 180, he does another 180. So now he's done a full 360 in this one spot. And then he starts to head north. Okay. And now he's directly east of me. So now like I'm downwind of him. So wind's good. Like he can't figure out and I'm hidden so well. But now he's really close to me. Like he's
okay. So, but let me go back here.
Yep.
This whole time, how much time has elapsed since the shot? Do you think?
There's a couple minutes he just kind of stands there.
Okay, and I know he's in thick stuff.
Yep.
But like, did it ever cross your mind like maybe I did hit him?
No, I was so convinced. Like I would bet the house on it. Like I was so convinced I missed this deer, and because the time once he took those 2 bounds, now he's even closer to me. Like he's 23, 24, maybe 25 yards. I'm reading his body language. Okay. But the only thing, it's super thick. Like I can see the top of his back. I can see his neck and his head. Like he's not like he's got no hunch in him. And like it doesn't look like he looks completely healthy.
It's almost like something scared him from behind him or something like that.
Like he heard like someone snapped a branch right under him, but he doesn't know where it came from.
Right. Yep.
And so now he did this 360 and he's going to start headed north. And I'm like, I have one more opportunity to get his shot, but I'm going to have to stand up now. Because now what was such good cover for me is too much cover and I can't shoot through it. Because, when I shot him the first time, I was right on the edge of this downfall. And now I need to be up over it. And as soon as I got a quarter of the way stood up, he picked me. And I was skylined at that point. Like I look back, should I have waited? I don't know. Instantly call my wife. And I watch him bound off. Like, looks like 100% healthy
and you're
deal.
Pissed.
I instantly call my wife. Goes, well, just missed him. She goes, no, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. She goes, you just missed Wispy, the one you were going out to hunt tonight. I goes, yeah, I literally just missed him. She goes, well, just go hunt him somewhere else. You know us. I'm like, no, there's no chance. It's over.
Thank you to all the wives out there, but it you understand, but you don't understand.
Yeah, like it's over. Like
yeah,
like she's like, well, just go hunting. Let's go hunt and come home. And watch.
Man, I wish we could have that demeanor. Right?
Yeah.
That's all right. Let's just go hunting.
Yeah. Just go hunting. It's unbelievable. And I text my buddy and give you a call. I said, dude, I just missed him. And you're like, no way. I said, yeah. And I'm walking up there. I'm like, well, I gotta go find my arrow. And my arrow is actually jammed into there's an old stump, rotted out stump, and it's sticking in the stump, and I got white veins. I'm walking up to it, and I can see they're just plain as white. And I can see the whole arrow shaft is as clean as can be. And I probably look like
Well-
I probably look like a child, but I grab the arrow and just freaking whip it out of the stump. And I look at the broadhead and I go, there's a couple white hairs, and on the broadhead there's that white like fat, I goes, well, I just gave him a haircut, and I was probably mad. Dude, I gotta go. And I'm looking at the fletchings, and there's maybe at best just a smear of red. And I'm colorblind, but I can, they're white fletching. But that's just only one fletching. Other than that, the arrow there is not a pin nail of blood on this arrow. And I'm standing there looking at this arrow, and I'm just kind of disgusted with myself. And I look over at that scrape because I want to see what the licking branch looks like. And I look back down at my arrow. I'm holding it right between my hands. And when I look down, I see one small drop of blood. And I'm like, oh shit, there's blood right there. And it's just a tiny drop. I'm like, oh, it's got to be a flesh wound. But in the tiniest drop of blood is also the tiniest bubble. I'm like, okay, like, well, they're bubbles from something. And so, okay, so I definitely hit them. And now I went from I'm betting the house that I missed them to now I'm betting the house I just gave them a haircut, and that's just going to be like flesh wound.
Okay, so since I'm filming this, and hopefully this works out, but for everybody listening, if this video does work out, go to YouTube. This is going to be on YouTube, but this is the picture he sends me of the blood that he finds. Mm-hmm. He goes from betting the house that he missed to that.
Yeah.
And I remember when you called me, you're like, I missed him. Immediately pissed, and I would have been too. And I'm like, are you sure? You're like, yep, I missed him, and then you're like, I don't know if you called me back or if I was on the phone or whatnot, and you're like, dude, I got blood.
Yeah.
Like, and I know you're colorblind. He's like,
what'd I say? I don't even know.
He goes, I can't fucking see blood, but there's a lot of blood right here.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Because I find this one little drop of blood with a bubble.
This is the little drop of blood that he found.
And so I'm instantly, the bubbles got me kind of intrigued. I'm like, well, what's the bubble from?
And this is all the blood that was on the vein. Yep. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's literally one little streak of blood.
Yeah. And so when I find that, I see there's a dead log right there. And I'm like, well, I'm going to stand on this dead log and just see if maybe by chance I can see where he stopped and did that whole 360. And I just kind of look up there, and like we just said, I'm as colorblind as they come. And the leaves were dry and they're really dark right then. But I instantly was like, oh my God, that is
so much blood.
So much blood right there. But I'm like, he was, like I said, though, I couldn't see. I could just see the top of his back and his neck and his head at that point. And he didn't act hurt, but I couldn't see anything else. I was like, instantly, everything changed. Called the wife, said, I'm not hunting. This deer is bleeding. Looks like a stuck pig. Okay. I'm coming home. But I watched this deer run away from that. And he did not look hurt at all. I said, I'm coming home. We'll hang out. The family will watch the game tonight. I'm coming back in tomorrow with a dog. That's my initial thought. Mm-hmm. And so I'm walking out, and there's like this 2-track. And I'm walking out, and I'm kind of like, looking up dog numbers, and there's one particular guy I was hoping to get out on this track, and I just happened to look up, and what my best guess is about 100 yards in front of me, Wispy, this deer I shot, steps out in front of me.
On a 2-track trail.
On a 2-track, and instantly locks onto me.
You and I were on the phone,
okay,
I think.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And instantly locks onto me. Like, and he's 100 yards away. Like, best I can guess is 100 yards away. And now I'm like, oh yeah, this deer ain't dying. But when he stops and he's completely broadside to me, and I shot him on his left side, and when he crosses this trail, he's going east to west, so I can see his left side. When he stops, like I said, 100 yards away, I don't even need to pick up the binoculars. All I could, in my head, I goes, that's a big hole. I could see just the color of it. but I knew it was low.
How low?
Well, you think about in the beginning, I thought I missed. So I knew like it had to be like low. Like when you look at a deer, right under their lungs, it kind of, where it's under the body where it's white, and then it meets like the tan or the brown or whatever the color. And then just, if you can picture, like if you're looking at a target and you see those lungs, and there's kind of, even on like a 3D target, I know they're not a good representation of it, but there's like, then there's like that little bit of foam underneath. Like that's kind of where, like, but I seen it with my physical eye. So I knew where it hit, and he was broadside when I shot him. So he eventually sees me, and he turns around and runs right back into where he came from. Okay. Now he heads back into the east to the swamp that he just came out of. I was like, oh, shit. And so then I'm like, well, let's go up there and look at where he was standing. And this is 2-track with like grass on it. So like, I'm probably definitely not. And plus at this point, we're a long ways away, and I'm going to tell you how far it is here in a minute, but, I'm making my way up there, and what's he do? He comes back out on the trail again, up even farther ahead of me. And now, like, he knew I was there, where he didn't even bother stopping to look at me. He gets out on the trail and starts to walk, like, when a buck's got his, like their long necking on a doe trail.
Yep.
That's what he's doing. Like, he's going straight away, and I'm like, what is going on here?
Like he's like almost got his nose down.
Yeah, like he has that kind of side to side trot.
Yeah,
like he's smelling, like he's just following a doe through there. And so then I'm like, did he bump a doe? Like after I shot him, and then the swamp he ran into, did he bump a doe? And now he's trying to follow that doe. Like I'm telling you, Aaron, the body language of this deer looked like he was 100% fine. Okay, but as I keep walking up this trail, then all of a sudden, boom. I see exactly where he's standing, and there is blood everywhere. And it's full of bubbles and a little bit frothy, okay? And so I stop to drop a pin, and I'm like, this is a lot of blood. This is equivalent to like the blood where that first 2 bounds he took. But I'm like, I just got to line distance this thing on Onyx. And obviously this isn't the line that the deer ran. He went farther than this, but the line that from where I shot him to where he crossed the path in front of me the first time, where I have just a pool of blood, it's 474 yards.
That's so far.
474 yards, and we have another giant puddle of blood. And the only reason I know this is because I seen him stop at point A where I shot him, and point B, just because I'm walking out, and I have that kind of blood on both spots. So now I'm like, that's a lot of blood. If he bled like that we'll just call it 500 yards that he did somewhere in that swamp. It's a lot of blood bleeding like that at, 500 yards away.
And 2 holes in him too.
2 holes in him, but I also seen his demeanor. Like I've seen hurt deer, I've seen perfectly healthy deer. This deer, he looked good to me. So got a hold the guy I really wanted to come out and track. He was just so busy. He literally had 12 guys in front of me. Sent me a list. I called someone local to me. He actually denied the track. He said it sounded like I shot him in his leg, and I said I seen him with my physical eyes.
And I said that was full of shit.
Yeah, you called it, and I said if you don't want to track, that's fine. I understand, right? Because I take a picture of the arrow. The arrow damn near looks like I missed the deer, but I seen that hole. Like I physically seen him when he popped back out at 500 yards. I seen it, so I knew where it was, and I'd be the first to admit. I told you the whole time I'm low. I drew it on the deer where I hit him. I'm low, but this is the blood. Get a hold of another dog tracker, and he sees the blood. He is, I don't care. The arrow doesn't bother me. Look at the blood.
That's where I was at with it.
He goes, that the bubbles, that frothiness. He's like, look at it. He's
and
like,
the sheer amount of it.
Right. Yep. But so when that time when he stepped out on the trail, like I said, we're somewhere around 500 yards. Obviously, he's not double lunged, and obviously he isn't heart hit, but he's bleeding. So now are we talking about a deer that's eventually just going to bleed to death? I go home, spend the night with the family. I have a dog lined up in the morning. There's other guys that hunt this property, so I try to be respectful. I waited till 10. Okay, I'm taking the dog out there, and I tell the guy, I says, on our way out here, because they always like to start at the site of the shot. The dog works best from there. I says, we are going to cross this deer's path twice, trying to get to where I shot this deer. I said, I don't know what the dog's going to do. He said, okay. We're walking out there, and boom, dog picks right up on it, and he goes, blood right here. And it wasn't even the spot that I found. It was the second spot when he come out on this 2-track, when he was headed up the 2-track, looked like he was dogging a doe. Dog picks right up on that. Dog jumps right in the swamp, and off he goes. And I goes, yeah, and I have my daughter Bailey with me,
because she can see blood.
Yeah. And we're standing there, and in kind of where he jumped back in the swamp, there's 3 trails, and Bailey's like, can I go see if I can find any blood? I'm like, yeah, have at it, because this handler wanted him and his dog just go ahead, and we stayed in contact.
Yep. And
Bailey's just blood, but not like those big piles. And I'm starting to think the piles are from when yes, I understand when they stand still they're going to bleed, but I almost think it's because of the way his left leg was maybe forward, the way he was bleeding like that,
opening up his wound a little bit more.
Yep. So we spent the next, I think we were somewhere around 5 or 6 hours with the dog, and the GPS on the dog was right around a mile. And part of this mile was a lot of circling in the swamp this deer was doing. He wasn't straight lining like he was hurt. He wasn't running, but we were there, drop of blood here, and the dog handler was one of the best I've seen.
Any beds?
Never laid down. Okay. And the handler was marking every bit of blood with this guy was certified, just excellent at what he did. Okay. And eventually this deer makes it to about, I'd say it's 80, 90 acre wide open field that had been disked under. It was a bean field. Now it was just pure dirt. And eventually made it through the next swamps, and always kind of ran through 2 swamps, and now he's to a wide open field, and we had no clue what way he went from there. Okay.
When you got to that field?
Yeah. And so we checked the perimeter, and we just never picked up anything. And I don't know if it was just, there's so much just dirt smell, and I don't know. But just knowing the deer, I was like, I kept thinking, oh, maybe he hooked south, kind of maybe go back towards home. But we called it that day, and the handler and myself and even Bailey were just the way the blood ended was that this deer is probably going to survive. And the handler, he knows deer so well, and he's like, what I'm thinking is that you maybe just clip the bottom of one of the lungs. Because if you remember in my story how I said the deer was about 2 to 3 foot in elevation down below me, and if I already thought I missed low, and if I did make contact that low, I may have only clipped the left side lung and not got both.
Tell me this. Did you shot him for 30, but did you ever range it or pace it off?
Yep. So after the day with the dog, Bailey and I left my arrow out there, so then if the dog needed to come back, we had a great starting point. And Bailey and I went back there to grab the arrow, and she said, Dad, tell me about it all. And so we went through it. I showed her. You could still see where I had kind of army crawled up through the dirt, and then you could see my knee marks from where I shot him. And I paced it off in not a rangefinder, but I paced it off, and I was at 34 yards. So I was just off. And I'm glad you brought that up, because this is something I wanted to hit on. So my yardage is just off, but it's not too bad, right? But I truly believe if I would have just aimed, let's say, to double lung him, and if I was only 4 yards off, I would have heart shot him. And I should have read in my mind, I should have read about the external noise because I was so worried about him dropping. I was thinking, I'm on the ground, like he's gonna know, like this is gonna sound different than in a tree. Like he's gonna hear this and duck. Where there was so much noise going on that it helped me not only get in within somewhat top pin range of him. He wasn't gonna hear that shot, and he was completely comfortable. It's 3:00 in the afternoon. Like he felt safe, like if I should have just aimed double lung, and at worst, if I'm 4 yards off, then I would have heart shot him. That's just something I learned, like maybe now going forward, the situation probably won't ever happen again. Right. But now in my mind, if you have that external noise, maybe say grain bins or dryers running or tractors running, and you got traffic nearby, who knows, a park, neighbors out, like, I should have read that external noise better and thought about that when I was actually going to shoot them.
Well, too, and like your top pin is going to be a 20-yard pin, which normally, like the vast majority of bow hunters out there, their top pin's 20. Yep. So, my 20 to 30 pin gap is different between my 30, or I'll even say my 20 to 25 or 25 to 30 is different than 30 to 35.
Yep.
So like, let's say you shot the deer for 20. If you thought he was at 20, he ended up being at 24, dead deer.
Yep.
It's not going to be that low.
Yep.
But as you go back farther, that pin gap gets, your arrow's arcing a little bit more. Because I know there's probably people on here right now thinking like, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you shoot him for 30, but you did shoot him for 30, but my 30 is normally 430.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then you're going to pin gap.
Yeah, the farther you go out, that larger that pin gap becomes, or whatever.
Exactly.
Like, I shoot a 1 pin sight, so on my sight, if you look at the yardage marks between 20 and 30, they're pretty tight. 30 and 40, they start to expand, and as you roll through that dial, the farther they expand. And that's why I said, like, if I would have just aimed double lung, that's just naturally who I am. I'm just that's kind of my aiming spot. But I was like, this is a new situation for me on the ground. No cover. Like this is unplanned. Like this is right here, right now, in your face. Let's try to kill this thing.
So you guys go back out there and range it and everything.
Yep. And we go back out there and range it, and he's 34 yards. And then a lot of it started making sense about being low and whatnot, and Bailey, she's so funny. We spent all day out there, and this stuff is tough walking, and she's such a trooper. And my wife and daughter, they would have been out there with me too, Madeline, but she was at a college combines. Bailey says afterwards, she said, well, you owe me about 6 McFlurries and some chicken nuggets. And I said, okay, let's go. And so so that's the 30th that happens, and we come up. You
shot him on the 29th
and the 30th. We come up empty-handed. We spent all day, just one of those things where it's like, had to ease the mind that we did what we could. But I never felt at ease with it. Like I just couldn't get over the amount of blood. And in this next part of the story, I know there's people out there that say that they don't like cell cameras and stuff like that, or they want to dog them or whatever, and that's fine. Everyone has their beliefs, but every day after that, I knew this deer. I knew this deer pretty well. Okay, and I knew where he lived, and so I started shifting some things around. And if he was alive, I was going to get him back on camera. That was my honest belief. I know this. This year I just know how this deer moves, where he lives, where he eats. I'll get him back on camera. He'll show. I even told the handler, I said, I will send you a picture when I get him. He said, okay, it sounds good, because he even said, he's like, whether you find him alive or you find him dead, I want to know everything, because he can learn from it too.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was the 30th, I believe. Yeah, and I have the quote unquote rutcation starting on the 4th. Okay. And so I didn't do much hunting that day, those days in between. We had Halloween with the kids, and I had to finish work up, and we're going to start hunting again on the 4th, which would have been like a Friday on a Friday. So that Friday rolls around, and now it's been 6 days, and I'm starting to tell the wife, he's dead. He's not showing back up. Like, he was conditioned to one scrape so well that he could never go a week without checking it. And I kept saying, he's dead. I'm just telling you he's dead. And I'm out on Friday. The kids are in school, and my wife's working, and I'm trying to get some yard work done before rutcation starts. And I can't stop thinking about it. And that day, from where I shot him to this 2-track he ran across, I said, I put a regular SD card camera out there in the beginning of July, and the actual date was July 7th. And it's just a spot I wanted to learn. Soaker cam, what we've all talked about, learning for the next fall. And I said, I should go check that. Because the more I thought about it, where it was placed, and if I was reading the topography right in there and the way that the edges were, that if he came through there, he's probably going to be on there. Like, if I expect this trail camera to pick up that kind of deer movement. And I'm slowly going through the trail camera. Like, I drop everything I do in the yard. I didn't even change my clothes. I just drive all the way to this property, to go out there, pull this card out of the camera, and I get home, and I'm slowly going through it. And he's not on there anywhere, like all summer in October. And I'm watching the date, and we get to the 28th, and I said, okay, tomorrow's the next day on going to be on the camera. And at about 3:40 on the 29th, there he is. And he is.
And that was right after you shot him.
About 20 minutes after I shot him. And it's hard to tell on a picture because it's not the greatest.
Here's the picture. If you're watching on this is the picture, and David even circled where the shot was.
Yep. On a computer, I've showed that picture to people on a computer screen, and on a computer screen you can actually see he's got blood on like 2 of his legs and stuff. Like, the deer was bleeding, right? But that picture's around 400 yards away from where I shot him, so I knew it was low, but I seen that, and it was like, whether he died that day or 2 days, the deer, like, I was at that point, I was sold on this deer is dead, because now we're 6 days after, and I'm looking at this picture now, and I'm like, yup. So that night on the 4th, like I said, my rutcation's starting, and I go hunt a spot, and good hunt, whatever. But just remember the date of the 4th, because that's going to come later on in the story. And I'm continuing to hunt, and I'm trying my best to be positive, but in the back of my mind, like, I also know I have this other big deer I've talked about, and somewhere around the 6th or so.
6th would have been
Monday. Give me the 7th. I found out the big deer had been killed, and that's
your number one deer.
Yeah, and that's another funny story too, about, because long story short, Bailey and I, the day we recovered my arrow, the day after I shot this deer, that deer was laying 40 yards from where I recovered my arrow. Bailey and I jumped the big deer, ran off over to the neighbors, and
shot him right then.
Yeah.
Salt in the wound.
But deer drive that thing right to him,
man.
But so at this point now, it's kind of like in my head, I'm like thinking, my number one's dead, and I know I have a dead deer laying somewhere. But where this deer lives is not easy ground to find a deer in. Like, it is terrible. And I was actually talking to my grandpa about it, and I said, I just can't. If he was dead, he would think there'd be turkey vultures or something. And he said, David, they've probably went south for the year already. It's getting too cold for them. I started thinking about, damn, I don't even know if I knew that.
Yeah.
I guess you're kind of right. Maybe
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he's wrong. I don't know.
Seems right.
Yeah, like, he'll listen to it, and he'll say, "Oh, I was right." So remember the 4th. I went hunting the night of the 4th, and then
the 7th was a big day.
The 7th was a big day, and so let me think. There were 7th, 8th, 7th. Okay, then the 9th, the morning,
Wednesday.
Yep. The morning of the 9th, I go hunting, and I think you were up in Saskatchewan, so I don't think we were talking much, but some of my other buddies and my wife, so we're at the 9th here. I'm texting my wife in the morning, and it's time change already, so, it's getting daylight somewhere around like 6:50 or so, and so, this is rutcation. I'm hunting all day. Like, this, as soon as it started, I may be moving midday, but I'm just grinding, and somewhere in the morning of the 9th, around 9 o'clock, I've had enough. And I had a great hunt that morning, got some really cool footage of some bucks, and
You just couldn't sit in the stand any longer.
I was done. Dude, I couldn't do it. Because the morning of the 9th, I was kind of somewhat back in the area that I knew Wispy lived in. And you had one really, really big swamp, then one little smaller swamp. And I was kind of set up in between, just kind of hoping for like some cruising bucks. And the bucks, I had seen 4 or 5 bucks that morning, and they all did kind of what I was hoping. And at 9 o'clock, I told my wife, I said, I can't sit here no more. I whether it's wasted or not, I'm gonna have to spend the rest of my vacation like hunting a little bit here and there, but I'm just gonna walk everything I know, because they got to a point where after having Wispy dead and then my number one buck I called Top Gun dead, like I was kind of to the point where it's like if whatever I blow up, it's okay, And so I get down at 9:30. It is November 9th, and here I am like preach, like put your time in, it all can change in 30 seconds. And I get down at 9:30. I shed all my outer gear, and I turn on the tracker on my Onyx map, and I'm just going to grid the shit out of this one swamp. Let's just knock one area off. Okay. And it's not even a real big swamp, but I think it was right around like 1.8 miles in there. And afterwards I said, he's not in here. But this swamp, he would have had to walk through the day I shot him. So I knew there's maybe a possibility.
Right. Yep.
In my mind, I kept saying, what's the chance he goes back home? Like, it would be a long, long travel for him to do it. But I kept thinking that. So that was the 9th, the morning of the 9th. And so I spent all day or all middle of the day looking, and then I'm headed back out to hunt the evening of the 9th. And as right or wrong as this is, I keep things pretty close to the vest. Like I have a small circle of friends. They get to see some of the deer I'm hunting, and I keep things just generally quiet. I've been burned in the past. The evening of the 9th, I'm sitting in the stand. I'm just as fidgety as get out, and I finally say, I'm just going to open discussion with any other people that can hunt the same property and every landowner around it. Because now I have a picture of the deer I shot with a hole in them.
Right. Yep.
And I don't know if I've ever even told you this, but I've had a deer taken from me before.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like it's the only non-typical I've ever shot in my life. And long story short, I gained permission to go get it, and another guy that actually hunted that property went out there and took it and got it freaking mounted.
Oh my God.
And so I've always kept thinking, and this is big non-tip, like it's cool as it gets, dude. And so I've since, yeah. And I mean, we end up finding where he gutted it and everything. But anyways, I always felt that like I just gave up too much information to burn me. So I'm not doing that no more. So on the 9th, I take the picture and I get on the phone. I'm hunting, so I'm not making phone calls, but I'm calling all these landowners or texting. Here's a picture of the deer I shot. Let me know if you find them. I hope you don't find them. What I really hope is he shows up on one of your trail cameras. That's all I ask for. You don't have to send me the picture. If you can just say, hey, David, guess he did show up, or he has shown up since the 29th, because I give him a date. Hell, that trail cam picture has the date and time on it. So It's all the information anyone needs. And if someone else finds them, if they want to keep them, hey, that's on you, okay? Maybe a different decision we would make, but if that's the one you want to make, that's on you. And then afterwards, it gets dark, and then I run into a couple other local hunters. Hey, this is the deer I shot. I can't find him. My gut says he's dead. We're at a week and a half now. So okay. But there's one other text I made that day, and it was to a farmer, and I know the farmer well, and he doesn't own the ground. They just lease the ground. And I says, I won't say his name or anything, but I says, when you guys take this corn off, it's like, I think about 80 acres of corn. And eventually when you get to it, if you by chance find a deer, let me know. He said, oh yeah, I'll keep an eye out. No problem.
Is he a hunter?
No.
Okay.
Okay. And some of the other farmers there hunt, but they're not hunting this particular piece of ground.
Well, tell me this. Why did you text him? Did you think, is that where the deer was running, that direction? Or was it just like on a whim, like, hey, he's got some standing corn.
It was,
let's just see, if he finds it.
It was, I mean, there's always a chance, right? Mm-hmm. But I was at my last, I was trying to think of anything and everything, someone I could talk to. And how, let's just say maybe he crosses a road and that farmer's up there farming, or they're, spreading cow manure, and they say, oh man, look at that dead deer laying out there. Because at the last point that I knew he was in a wide open field. I didn't know if he heads, if he
on the same farm you shot him, right?
Yes. And he stayed on the same farm the whole time. But I don't know if he went across the road. I have no clue what he did. Mm-hmm. I have zero, he could be a mile from here. He could be under my nose, but it was, I still had a lot of areas in my mind that I needed to walk. But as in contacting people, it was kind of I talked to everyone else, and because I was mainly looking for a trail cam picture. That was my thought, is someone will get a trail cam picture, because in today's world we're all running them now. Mm-hmm. And so and he says, yeah, man, no problem. And I literally told him in the text, I says, it's probably a very slim chance, but just let me know. And so that was on the 9th, and the 10th is a Thursday. Didn't hunt on the 10th. So then Friday rolls around, and here I am again, middle of the day, and I can't freaking stand it. And I got plans. I know where I want to hunt, maybe the night of the 10th, right? No, the 11th is a Friday. I know where I want to hunt that night, but guess what I'm going to do during the day? Here I go again. Let's go check off some more areas, just gridding it. But now I'm going to go into an area that I know so well, and I know where most of the beds are in these areas. I'm not saying I know where them all, but I know where a good amount are. And I'm going to kind of grid, but I'm also going to start checking beds off, because maybe he went and laid down. Because if he tries to circle back home, he has to go through this area. Just maybe, okay? But if you're ever going to see a crow or a turkey vulture flying above or a dead animal, this would have been the area. So I wasn't because I was checking this daily.
Yep.
Every time I got in the vehicle to drive, I'd go drive by it just to see if I could see any type of, bird out there that was, looking for a dead animal. And so that day I did 3.1 miles and just the nastiest stuff. And I'm just checking beds off, and nothing again. Okay. So that's on the 11th. That's a Friday. Get up the next morning and go hunting. And so now we're on the 12th, on a Saturday. And my daughter she wanted to make family dinner that night. And my wife's like, no, go ahead and go hunt. It's your vacation. And all morning, I'm going to be honest, this is nothing. I've never had this feeling. And I haven't even told you about it. Usually this is something I'd text my buddies, but the morning of the 12th, Saturday, I was just waiting for the time to get down. I can't wait till
you want to get out of the tree.
this is where I was at with how I was starting to feel. I was ready for gun season, so then I could say, I'm done. I've tried. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I got to the point where now we're 2 weeks in on the 12th, exactly 2 weeks after I shot him. And no one's seen him on camera, and I have not found him in some of the areas I checked. It's going to be the dog and I are going to have to find him in the spring. My dog.
I haven't told you. I'm I'll come down, put boots on in the spring, and we'll find this thing.
Yeah.
Because I was convinced the day that you shot him that I kept telling you, I'm like, that deer's dead.
Yeah.
He doesn't live with that much blood gone.
Yeah. Yeah. You kept saying you thought he was dead, and I had other buddies that, they were, they kept saying, they were being, positive, saying, well, he'll show back up, or you'll get another crack at him, and maybe they thought he was dead too, just trying to lift me up a little bit. But so I just, after that hunt in the morning, man, I just went home and just took care of my shit. I did. And my wife's like, you hunt tonight? And I said, nope. And she goes, why? She goes, gun season's looming. It's 3 days away. I said, nope. Madeline's making dinner, and I'm just gonna sit home. Well, somewhere around right as I was getting down that morning, the farmer texts me and he says, "Hey, I'm going to take that corn off tonight, but it's probably going to be after dark. But if I didn't know if you maybe want to hunt, and a lot of times the farmers around us, they'll get a hold of you if they're taking corn off, maybe some good deer hunting." I said, "All right, appreciate it," and like that was it, And
Tell me this, is this cornfield, is it like adjacent to the farm you shot him on, or is it on the farm that you
it's
shot
on
him?
the farm.
Okay.
Okay, it is on the farm. The cornfield that he's telling me is going to take off is the cornfield that I was walking through when I first seen him.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it's in and around there, but
Yep.
but at the last blood we had of him was a long ways away from this cornfield. And he said, "I'm going to take it off. It'll probably be after dark. It's cool, man." Like, I just told him, literally have a safe harvest. Like we're always so appreciative of the farmers, and I always just hope that they're safe,
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting. The Michigan game was on, and we had ate dinner, and it was dark, and it's sitting downstairs, and my phone goes off. And like I said, I'm not going to say his name on there, but I looked down, and there's his name on my phone, and I instantly
got chills.
I instantly jumped up, and Bailey's like, "What?" And I was like, "I guarantee you found him." And he says, "Hey, I found a deer," and I was like, and I just knew it, like, had to be him, right? But he goes, "But he's only got 5 points on one side. It's him." I don't know every deer, but I got a pretty damn good grip on the deer.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I hunt an area, I have a pretty good grip on what's around. Not always, but most of the time. And I was like, "It's him. It's gotta be him." I said, "Look at the picture," and he goes, "Oh, yep, it's him." And he instantly like, "Oh, I'm sorry." He's like, I must hit the other side
With the combine.
Yeah, or it ran it over, and I said, "Dude, you're fine. Like you're in a giant thousands of pounds of equipment. You're like a deer, Then he goes, "Oh shit, it's right here." He's like, I'll stick it by the deer." And he says, I'll leave up a row of corn, and he's at the end of it. And then he says, I'll send you a picture of the tractor screen so you can see where I'm at in the field. And I said, "Oh yes," like I'm instantly like, I go up, and my family's like, "What's going on?" Like he found him, and my wife's going, "No way." And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, like, "You freaking knew it. You kept saying that he was dead." And so when he sends me the picture of where he's at, I was like, "Well, that's weird because that's right on the edge." But I'll be there in a minute. And so we drive back there, and he said, "Just drive the truck back here because it's we're taking the corn off, and we're in the headlights, and me and Bailey, and I got my normal clothes on and threw a jacket on, and got some headlamps, and then I brought the camera on, and." Or I'm looking in the headlights, and I can see the end of the row of the corn, and I can't see them. And so then I was like, "Hand me a flashlight, Bailey. We'll roll down the window." When I rolled down the window, the smell was horrendous. I could smell them before I even seen them. Okay, so remember this part. And finally, it goes, "Oh my God, there he is!" And I was like, "Oh, it's wispy. He's right here." Okay. And when I say right here, he was 4 rows in. Off the field edge. And when I say 4 rows, that means he was 8. I walked it off. So he's 18 yards off the walking path. And so on the morning of November 9th, on the evening of November 9th, and the evening of November 4th, I'd walk by him every time. So that's
within 18 yards of him.
3 hunts. That's 6 trips because I had to use that. That's the way I used. And all 3 of those hunts were from different locations, but I was just using that way to access it. Okay. He was 4 yards in, 18 yards away. But here's the thing. I cannot understand how I never smelled him, but I'm using this access on south winds. Okay. And when I use this access with a south wind, it always put him north of me. But still, we're talking about a deer that's been there for 2 weeks. Okay. I will never know how long was it that night did he make it there? Was it 2 days later? Okay. What I do know is I've went back out there twice. Okay. The deer was obviously completely eaten, and he had been there long enough where I think everyone's seen like roadkill where it starts to turn black.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he was. Like there was nothing, like all the insects, all the bugs, they've all settled in doing what they do. But the fact that I had for 2 weeks, there was 3 hunts, 6 trips basically, and I was within 18 yards. And I know I'm not the only one that's walked by him back there.
Tell me this, where he was laying, when you were on the stalk to shoot him, was he laying like on your path where you walked in? Or was it in a different part of the...
It would have been the same path if I would have kept walking.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't have, because Onyx is just line distance. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go where he died, he was closer to where I shot him. He was still quite a ways from where I shot him, but from last blood to where he died was almost 1,000 yards. And from last blood to where I shot him, we were over a mile already right there. So if I just straight line it, he was close to a 2-mile loop. But you know what he was doing, Aaron? He was headed back home. Mm-hmm. Because when I say that I went back in there and hunted, because if you early on in the story when I kept saying remember these dates, I was going back in that area to hunt to hopefully see him again.
Right.
Okay. When I would cut in to go hunt him, he was right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole time. And I have 2 thoughts, and it's got to be one of them. I would guess. One, he got to the point that he was just hurting so bad that he couldn't make it home, and that was like if he went 10 yards more, he would have been in a wide open walking right on the edge of a field. Or 2, did he lay down there knowing how hurt he was, but he knew where he was to monitor any coyote traffic or human traffic on that edge. Because that deer knows people walk through there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 6 times I walked by him within 18 yards. And yes, I would have never seen him in there because it's actually almost like it's kind of in a spot of a field that they can't plant tight to the woods. So it's a little overgrown than corn. So you wouldn't visibly see him.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact I never smelled him, because you got to think we had a couple days in the rut where it was over 70 degrees and he had been laying there.
Right.
I can't.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I feel absolutely terrible. Like I've recovered deer the next day. I've had recovered deer the next day and had to deal with coyote problems, but not 2 weeks.
Yeah. That's wild. So how much damage did he have done to him from the combine?
Hey, so his left side, after his G4, the main beam was snapped off. The complete right side is completely snapped off. Brow tine missing, big chunk of the main beam missing. I am going to have a taxidermist fix his antlers, and it is going to be costly, but I honestly feel like I deserve it. He deserves it,
Oh, yeah.
And funny story is I was kind of ambitious after I found him, like to really try to do the right thing that I could do with him. And after I dropped him off the taxidermist, I was like, I'm going to go out in that field and see if I can't find his antlers. And this is pit corn, like, right, like you're going to go find an antler. Well, I did. I found the end of his one main beam. I found about 6 inches of antler, but I still couldn't find the brow tine, and there's like a big sliver of the main beam missing. And it was so I just crack up because the farmer he was so apologetic about hitting him. I'm like, look how big a combine. Like I was like, buddy,
you wouldn't even have seen him until you hit him.
Yeah, like don't worry about it all. And I really owed him, and I know what kind of beer he drinks. I went and picked up a couple 6-packs of long necks and went and dropped them off on his porch for him because, maybe after the season or somebody probably eventually seen him laying there 4 yards or 4 rows into the corn, but without making that phone call to the farmer that day, I don't know if the story would have ever ended with him.
Jeez, that's crazy. And going back to like getting him repaired, like I would have done the same thing. And this is why, because you have so much history with him. You have hundreds of trail cam pictures of this deer. This was like one of your top deer, and in my opinion, that shot killed that deer. It's not like somebody else shot him or he got hit by a car after you shot him or something like that. Your shot was fatal. It just, and personally, I think after you shot him, I think he ran there and died. Maybe not that night, maybe the next day, but I think after you shot him, he made his way that way. And the only reason why you guys didn't find him is because you came to a plowed field.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you because, some of the areas that I looked for him were they're phenomenal areas. And it would have been like, if he would have died sooner, the type of areas he would have been laying dead in. But where he was, all I can keep picturing, if I look at a map, is he was just headed home, and he just couldn't make it. Mm-hmm. He got to the point that he knew he was inside cover, like he was gonna lay down, and it's we play this game of inches, right? We talked about it earlier. We're an inch higher or 2 inches higher, and I think that deer dies 2 bounds away when he stood there, and it was, so from what I can tell, I was directly kind of below his lung, and I think I just clipped one, but it was just a good enough clip that eventually it just ran out of blood and got sick, you know what I mean? Or what, I don't know. It's obviously it's not the way we want to see it end. It doesn't necessarily feel like such a win for bow hunting. But what it does, I could hang, like, before that farmer called me that day, just knowing gun season was coming and there was a lot of unanswered questions with what happened to him. I felt like I could hang my hat on just trying to do everything I could.
You did.
Yeah. It's not like me to reach out to a lot of people like that and just, and even, I didn't care that I was wasting time during the rut. Like I knew the deer, and my gut kept telling me that thing was dead.
Yeah. And that just goes to show, like, too, I've talked about it before, as well as like how that deer is going to tell you what's, in my eyes. I wasn't even on the track. You were just telling me, like, I thought for sure that deer was dead with the amount of blood, with your shot placement, with, I just thought he was dead, but it was going to take a bit. Now, if you would have, like you said, you knew that deer and you have a wide net cast of cameras, and if he's not going to show back up, because trust me, everybody listening, I'm not going to give too much, but like David is dialed, like, and has a finger on the pulse of every spot, every farm he has. Like, a leaf doesn't go on I'm telling you right now, he's so detailed that if he goes out there and a leaf is turned over, he knows whatever that leaf might be. So like, yeah, I mean, you did the right thing. You kept looking, and something was telling you. Your intuition was telling you, like, I need to get out of the stand. I need to go look for this deer. And that was the same thing that happened to me last year with my deer.
Yep.
I was like, this deer's going to die.
Yeah.
Like, I have to keep on him. I have to stay, and that's just, but there are some times you're on tracks where you're just like, man, it's just, he's not going to die.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's going to, or I think he's going to survive. So it's more times than not that I've kind of been right on that in my own instance. So I think you did the right thing. You kept after it. And I mean, it sucks, but it just goes to show you too, like, we do care about these animals a lot, and that's why we have so much fun chasing them. And I don't know why, like, if and this is going to go right to the antis. I don't know if I'm going to say this right. I'm going to go right off the rip with it. Right. But like, you might see the blood and the gore and be like, oh, these guys are just out there just killing shit. And all, like, yeah, but like, we love these things so much. Then what, if you've seen what we go through as far as misery when you put a bad hit on a deer or you can't find a deer, and how much it's like literally suicide watch sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. That's how much we love them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, fuck you, antis. You know what I mean?
It said it perfectly, man. It's, and I think a lot of us, and probably a lot of your listeners are the same, it's, obviously, our families are absolutely at the very top and number one, but, after that, it's we our love and our passion for hunting, whether it's, if you're big into elk hunting or whitetail hunting or turkey hunting or whatever it may be, like it's second to none. I don't think people can argue that, and it like that night when I went out there, Bailey and I, and she said, well, let's get some pictures, Dad. And I actually didn't even know what to do because I felt so terrible about it, and I almost didn't even want to get my picture.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know how, like, what to do with them. You know what I mean? Where
I totally get it.
I was so excited to get out there. I mean, drove 100 miles an hour to get out there, and then standing there, it was just, like they're just, it was like a gut punch. I didn't know how to describe it, honestly.
Yeah.
Like
well, you felt bad.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm sure in your head, you're probably like, dude, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like one of those, feel good stories. It could be Rocky or whatever. It's like, you want to, challenge yourself with these animals or whoever you may be, quote unquote, fighting.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just one of those things when you beat them, it's like bittersweet to where it's like, I did not mean for it to go down this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's like, I am truly sorry.
Yeah.
That, like, that type of moment.
Yeah. And especially, I don't want to say just Michigan, because, when you're hunting, a certain, I don't know, I say like a class of deer or whatever you're hunting. Like if you're targeting something specific, the opportunities, they don't come every day.
Right.
And so when it doesn't go, most of the time it doesn't go perfect, it's just hard, because you just know what you put into it, and to mess it up, in the heat of the moment, or just be off or whatever it may be. It's a hard pill to swallow, just because we put so much into it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the chances and the time, they just don't come often. That's reality.
Right. Yep. No, I couldn't have said it any better. So before we cut loose on this, did you end up like trying to score him or anything like that?
No, I mean, he's pretty pieced together. So if I just took his one side and somewhat guessed, well, now I got the end of his main beam, I could do that. But if I guessed him up, he'd just shy of 130.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great deer.
Yeah.
Not that matters, but like you said, reference point for people listening. Like, what kind of type deer are we talking about here? So
yeah. I'm gonna be really anxious to see how good they fix him up, and they'll do a great job. But you gotta think outside of like seeing him the day I shot him, I don't really know what he looks like yet.
Right. Yep.
In person,
Yep.
So I'm gonna get a European mount done on him, and it'd be cool to be able to grab him off the wall, and it'll be a memory for sure, because it was a roller coaster ride, but sometimes you got to keep riding the ride, because you just can't give up sometimes.
Yep, for sure, man. Well, dude, thank you for coming up here again, driving up here and doing this. One heck of a story. Yeah. I'm glad it came to an end as far as closure and you being able to get them, but it's just one of those things and how it went down.
Yeah, it is. And for anyone listening, if you're struggling out there this season, just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's before we know it, your season's going to be over, and maybe some of the best hunting's over with, but just keep going, because it can all change in seconds, or maybe you get another opportunity or whatever, but just keep going.
Yep, for sure. Well, everybody, thank you very much for listening or watching, whatever you did. Thank you for all the downloads, all the support and everything. Please go to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating, leave a written review, and also on YouTube, hit the subscribe button if you haven't. I'm going to try to do more of these video podcasts. It's pretty difficult to do. It's a lot of work, but it's something I want to start working in. So we'll definitely get into them. But thank you, everybody out there. Thank you for listening. David, thank you again for coming on, man.
Thanks, buddy.
And if you guys have tags that are not filled yet this season, good luck and shoot straight.